Welcome to Trinity Church of Austin. My name is Sid Hall and I'm Trinity's lead minister. We are so glad that you have joined us for worship today. We are in the midst of a series talking about what it means that we all fall down. And instead of hearing from me only, we are going to hear from different people from time to time. During this month, some of our other staff people, and later in November from church members themselves. And we'll be looking at what it means to live lives changed by the very experiences that seem to almost destroy us. The uncounted interruptions, the pains, the vulnerabilities, in ways that we never imagined. But how those painful experiences become the very ingredients, the very building blocks for what we are becoming. I think that we don't always take painful experiences as a catalyst for what can be, but we can. And I hope that this series helps us all get in touch with the way we have done that ourselves. Because of the coronavirus, of course, we continue to meet online instead of face-to-face. And I know we all want to be back together, but it's just too difficult right now. And so for the foreseeable future, we will continue to meet virtually. Today, we have a very special part of our service, and that is that we're going to hear from Gus Lott, our seminary intern. Gus has been with us for a while, and you get to see him pretty much every week at the end of the service because he is sharing the highlights from his home away from home in upstate New York, where he's sitting out the pandemic. And believe it or not, he continues to be active virtually and fulfills the requirements that are being asked for him to do as a seminary intern. And we are so fortunate to have Gus and his wife Sarah Matt and their wonderful boys as a part of our community. So please, with open hearts, I invite you to welcome Gus and his message a little later on in the service. In just a few moments, you'll have an opportunity to light a candle. It's a way that we create sacred space together, a way that we say that we're all in this together. So if you have a candle nearby and would like to bring that out, please feel free to do so you can light it at the end of the welcome time. At Trinity Church of Austin, we want you to know that no matter who you are, who you love, what you believe or what you don't believe, you are welcome here. Welcome, friends, to the celebration.
Hi, I'm Tim Brace, Director of Music at Trinity Church of Austin. I've been here at Trinity for about 9 years. In this series, for our threshold moment, we'll sing the hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth, with lyrics by Folliot Pierpoint and music by John Rutter. Folliot Pierpoint was a 19th century English hymnodist and poet, and wrote this hymn as an expression of the beauty of the countryside around his home in Bath, England. The melody we will sing with this text is by John Rutter, a contemporary English composer and conductor. His choral works combine a deep knowledge of the classical tradition with an appreciation for American and British popular music. The Trinity community is familiar with this piece, as we've sung it many times as the opening song in our services. Please stand in body and our spirit, and let us sing For the Beauty of the Earth.
My name is Angela, and I'm the Interim Children's Ministry Director at Trinity. And today I'm going to read you a book called Only One You by Linda Krantz. It's time, Papa said. I think it is, Mama agreed. Time for what? Audrey asked. Papa's voice softened. To share some wisdom. Always be on the lookout for a new friend. Look for beauty wherever you are and keep the memory of it with you. Blend in when you need to, but stand out when you have the chance. Find your own way. You don't have to follow the crowd. Know when to speak. Know when to listen. No matter how you look at it, there is so much to discover. If you make a wrong turn, circle back. If something gets in your way, move around it. Set aside some quiet time to relax and reflect every day. Appreciate art. It's all around you. Make wishes on the stars in the nighttime sky. Thank you for listening, Mama said. We hope you will remember. Papa winked and whispered, we know this is a lot for you to think about. Audrey did a backward somersault and smiled. He was excited to go out into the world with what he had just learned. Wait for me, he shouted to his friends. Before he swam away, he turned back to his parents and said, I will remember. Mama kissed Audrey on top of his head. There's only one you in this great big world, she said. Make it a better place. Let's pray together. Repeat after me, please. Dear God, thank you for our beautiful earth. Thank you for the animals and plants. Thank you for our community. Help us to care for all the beings in our world. Amen.
1,500 years ago, the Taoist Lao Tzu wrote these passages, which sound so modern to those who study and practice mindfulness meditation today. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut windows for a room. It is the holes, the spaces, that make them useful. Empty yourself of everything. Let the mind rest at peace. Everything rises and falls. They grow, flourish, then return to the source. I watch their return. Returning to the source gives stillness. Today for our meditation, I'd like to lead you through a short mindfulness exercise about staying present to the only moment we really have, now. Take a deep breath, relax your body, close your eyes. Now put your mind on your breath. Notice how it moves easily in and out, and how your body moves and flows gently and easily with the breath. Staying with the breath is to be here in this moment. It is foundational to mindfulness meditation, because being aware of your body means to have to be present now. Now let your mind rest and imagine space filling up your mind, a space with no thoughts, no feelings. Be still. If something wants your attention, watch it rise and then return your attention to the empty space that fills your mind. What rose will then fall and return to its source. If you feel too distracted, return your attention to your breath and begin again. Fill your mind with space. Be still. When you're ready, open your eyes, come slowly back into the room. Even though sometimes we think otherwise, we live in the present. Philosophers and scientists from Einstein to Doctor Who have pronounced that time as we think we know it is an illusion. Mindfulness helps us become aware of our grounding, of our souls of the divine in this moment. Thank you for your time.
Are there prayers now that you would offer for our lives and for our community? Please text your prayers to 512 766 3123. Let us pray for the families of the Matamoros asylum seekers who endure kidnappings and the mothers who are being assaulted, for the little children recently sent across the border in the middle of the night by their mothers, with the hope that the U.S. government will do the right thing and reunite them with their fathers in the U.S. Healing and joyful spirit, receive our prayer. From Paula and Serafina, prayers for our precious puppy Taylor, who has been suffering with a severe infection and who is back at the vet. Healing and joyful spirit, receive our prayers. Prayers for Dina's nephew Micah and wife Juliana and their new foster to adopt son Kendall. Healing and joyful spirit, receive our prayers. Continued prayer for Andrea, the wife of Chuck Ragland, since his passing. Healing and joyful spirit, receive our prayers. Let us pray for renewed strength and will and courage to face the uprising COVID numbers that surround us. Healing and joyful spirit, receive our prayers. Let us hold these prayers and those cradled in the silence of our hearts in a moment of silence. In this series, for our prayer time, we've been focusing on the words of creation-centered mystics. Karakia are prayers or incantations of the Maori First Nation people of New Zealand. Join me in a spirit of prayer as I recite a karakia. Allow one's spirit to exercise its potential to guide us in our work, as well as in our pursuit of ancestral traditions. Take hold and preserve it. Ensure it is never lost. Hold fast, secure it, draw together, affirm. Amen.
For this series, our song of reflection is Return to God, music and lyrics by Marty Haugen. Marty Haugen was born in Minnesota and was raised in the American Lutheran Church. More than 400 of his compositions have been published. He is composer in residence at Mayflower Community Congregational Church, which is affiliated with the United Church of Christ in Minnesota. Other pieces by him that we have sung here at Trinity include Gather Us In, All Are Welcome, and Wind Upon the Waters. We are grateful to Carol Lewis, Dave Robinson, and Light German for this body prayer, and to Mark Boyden for creating the video for us, and to the Trinity Choir for recording their voices and gathering virtually so we can see their faces as they sing with us. The lyrics are, Return to God with all your heart, the source of grace and mercy. Come seek the tender faithfulness of God. Please stand in body and our spirit, and let us sing together.
Return to God with all your heart, the source of grace and mercy. Come seek the tender faithfulness of God. Return to God with all your heart, the source of grace and mercy. Come seek the tender faithfulness of God.
Our first reading for today comes from John chapter 5, verses 2 through 13. The healing at Bethesda. Now in Jerusalem by the sheep gate there is a pool, called in Hebrew Bethesda, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made whole?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." Immediately the man was made whole, and he took up his mat, and he began to walk. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Judean authorities said to the man who had been cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your mat." But he answered them, "The man who made me whole said to me, 'Take up your mat and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take it up and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had disappeared in the crowd that was there.
Hi, I'm Valerie Ward, and the reading today is from Alan Watts' book, The Way of Zen. Paradoxical as it may seem, the purposeful life has no content, no point. It hurries on and misses everything. Not hurrying, the purposeless life misses nothing. For it is only when there is no goal and no rush that the human senses are fully open to receive the world. There is only now. It does not come from anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's not permanent, but it's not impermanent. Though moving, it is always still. When we try to catch it, it seems to run away, and it is always here, and there is no escape from it. And when we turn round to find the self which knows this moment, we find that it has vanished like the past. The aimless, empty life does not suggest anything depressing. On the contrary, it suggests the freedom of clouds and mountain streams wandering nowhere, of flowers and impenetrable canyons, beautiful for no one to see, and of the ocean surf forever washing the sand to no end.
Hey Trinity, it's Gus here, your pastoral intern. I'm in upstate New York. You can see the foliage around me turning colors for the fall and falling. It's been our kids' first time in winter. I think they're going to get a kick out of it. So we moved up here just a few months ago to be near my wife's parents. So we get some assistance with the kids since we have 4 of them home full time doing school online. That's been a trip. So and we're both working full time home. So when Sid came and asked me to give this sermon, he said it was about, the series is called We All Fall Down. And normally I can be pretty academic or talk about more philosophical topics. And I may get into some of that. But he asked me to tell a story about when I fell down. And that's a little bit outside my comfort zone, but we'll see where it goes. And the story that came to mind almost immediately was a story about grad school, when I was in graduate school. So when I started at graduate school at Cornell, which is right down the street from here, it's many miles south of here, but in New York, I started in August of 2001, and then just a few weeks in, the September 11th attacks happened. And yeah, that was a tough way to start grad school because it was pretty socially isolating. Very similar, I think, what we're experiencing here. That being in grad school is typically you're not part of the larger kind of undergraduate experience, and you're actually an employee of the school. And in my particular cohort in the field of biophysics, which is what I got my PhD in, that most of the students were from foreign countries, and so they had to essentially go right away to a lab and get on a research grant for their visa, the visa funding stuff. So it was isolating. I was struggling with being exiled from my faith community as I had kind of come through undergraduate and become a physicist, and this was kind of I'm sure many of you will share the experience was relatively incompatible with being in a Christian context. So I was becoming a professional scientist, and that was interesting. And so some of the hard times I started having had to do with, the social stuff going on, the isolation, the winters, but also even some of the research that I was working on. And since this was like neuroscience research, there's a lot of introspection into what kind of things we are as well, and a lot of heavy thoughts came with that. So one summer I got really kind of low, really low, just put it that. I remember not knowing if I was going to make it to the age of 25. I think I was 23 or 24 at the time. And I just remember that feeling. And then on top of that, I got a kind of kick in the gut. I got mono, the kissing disease, and I wasn't kissing anybody at the time. And it got pretty bad. And, I talked to my mother on the phone, and she came and visited me. And so preparing for this sermon, I called her, and I tried to remember some of that moment with her. And she not much of it came to her mind. She came and was there with me, and sat, and was just there, and it was nice. And then she went on home. Wasn't cured or anything by that, but eventually came out of the whole time and got through grad school, and here I am today. But that was about 18 years ago, so not much was still in her mind about what had happened. But we did remember just sitting together and being there, and she'd making breakfast and that kind of thing. Now, we're also in a hard time right now. Right? So we talk about how these sermons, and we'll have this kind of story structure of starting up high and going down low, and then having an aha moment that brings you out. And I don't really know if we're in that place right now, where we come out. I think, if anything, we're in Empire Strikes Back, and we're falling down out of Bespin. In November, we're about to get the reveal of who our next parental figure for a nation is. Oh my gosh. And that it is hard to see what the new thing is going to be when we come out of all this. So, I wanted to talk about being down there on the bottom of the second act and sit with it for a little bit. And so to do that, I picked this story from John, the Gospel of John, chapter 5. And it's probably my favorite story in the New Testament. I really recommend going back and reading it after this. So what it is this, somebody really knew what they were doing when they wrote this story. They're like a genius. So the Pool of Bethesda, the pool means house of mercy. And there's two pools. So archaeology has discovered this. There are 2 levels, and 5 porticos, or kind of covered areas around the pools where the sick sat. And what happened is it was a spring-fed deal, and periodically the door would be opened between the 2 pools, and there'd be this kind of stirring of the waters. And then the way that people thought it worked was that the first person to get into the waters after the stirring happened, they would get healed. And this really is an on-the-nose metaphor for the way this world works, the way the world we live in works. I mean, it's really critical of this. It's the people that need it the least, the ones that can walk and that are healthy enough to move their own bodies, they're the ones that could get healing the easiest, right? And it's the ones that are the most weak, the ones that can't even lift their own head. They're just laying there on a mat, and no one will help them, and they can't get themselves there. They need it the most, and they just can't get that healing. And it seemed really relevant in this moment when our president got the coronavirus, and the first thing they did was fly him to Bethesda, Maryland, where he got immediately healed, jumping to the front of the line with new crazy treatments. And the stories we hear of like long-term effects and months of recovery, and he's out running around 4 days later. I mean, this is how the world works. But it's not just our president even. I mean, I have a I have a relatively good credit score, and so a company will give me a car loan to buy a car whenever I want, basically. But my friends who don't have a friend of mine who doesn't have such a high credit score has a really hard time getting the same thing. And you might say that due to the place that I am in life, I need that loan the least, and he needs it most. And it seems like everywhere we turn, this is how the world works. So it's this kind of beautiful metaphor in the pool itself. And then it's just surrounded with other metaphorical symbols. The house, the word means house of mercy. It says there's 5 porticos, and we might read these as representing the 5 books of the Torah, the beginning of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. There's this kind of stirring of waters, but Jesus leads the man beside still waters. It takes place at the sheep's gate, and Jesus is later in the book called the shepherd and the gate. The sheep's gate to the temple in Jerusalem, which is a symbol for paradise. And so we can see just metaphors are flowing around here. References to Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Jesus asks the man, do you want to be healed? He makes me lie down in green pastures. And in John 6, it actually says, Jesus says, make them lie down, talking about all these people that were being fed. And then the narrator notes, there's a green pasture here, basically. And then he leads them beside still waters here in Bethesda. So you really know what was going on you can really tell what was in the author's mind at the time. So there was a man that was sick for 38 years, and that's a long time. Jesus says, do you want to be healed? The guy says, I can't do it. We say, sure, yes, I do want to be healed. But the guy says, I can't do it, and nobody else can do it for me. He's given up. He's given up hope. I think that's the key to this stage. He's down at that bottom, lowest point. Jesus says, stand up, take up your mat and walk. And he doesn't go and get in the pool. And it doesn't even really say that he was healed. It says he was made whole. So was this man's bum leg fixed? Here, or at that Bethesda, 100,000 Saturdays ago? No, I don't think it was. I don't think that's what happened here. And I think that reading it that way it really just empties this of value. This man was made whole. He realized that he was already whole. And it took him to get to that low point, a low point very much like where we are in this time of COVID. Struggling with the isolation, depressing feelings. But he was made whole when he realized he wasn't in control, that he couldn't do it. Now this is like the world we participate in. We find ourselves somehow in an accident, in a wheelchair, missing a limb, bound to an insulin pump, or in a toxic relationship. These are all facts. Now what do we do? And this story seems to say, well, we can sit there and we can jostle for being that first one to get healed, and maybe sometimes we do. Maybe sometimes we do get healed. Maybe we have resources that can kind of plow other people out of the way and hold our spot, like Trump did. And you might get magically brought back to something in what you call recovered. But then you'll be paralyzed onto the next thing. Great, now I'm recovered. Now can I run a marathon? Oh no, not yet. I need to get there. I need to be able to do that. Then an ultra marathon. Or maybe it's a maiming that happens and you can't recover. So this man was ill for 38 years, and there's a reason he was ill for 38 years in this story, just like every single piece of this story was thought carefully and placed here. This man was sick for 38 years, and 38 shows up in the Bible in one other place. It shows up in the book of Deuteronomy in chapter 2, towards the end of the Torah. And it's talking about the Hebrew people in the desert going through this low time. And God said, you can't, though, there was this whole kerfuffle, and they couldn't go into the promised land. They had to wait. And in Deuteronomy 2:14, it says, the time they waited in the desert until all the warrior minds, is called, these people that thought that they could do it, they could go do it on their own. The time it took was 38 years. And what were they being purged of in this time? Well, in Deuteronomy 1, it says that only the people that did not know good from bad, this, if you'll remember, is the fruit from the tree in Eden that brought us out into this condition in the first place. Metaphorically, of course. Those Israelites in the desert for 38 years had been purged of the knowledge of good and bad, but what does that mean? Out of all the non-judgment talk we hear from Jesus, I think it's important to understand that this means a way of looking at the world. And in the Hebrew language, there are only 2 verb tenses for an action. How do you describe an action? Well, in Hebrew, there's no past, present, or future. There's no dwelling in those places. There's only, is this event complete or is it incomplete? Those are the 2 verb tenses. It's called the perfect and the imperfect. And really, in a way, that's the diagnosis of the world. And to me, what the word sin means is that we live in this world as if the moment is incomplete, as if it's wanting somehow. Jesus asks, do you want to be healed? Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And in the desert, the Israelites were purged of this idea that came into the world by Adam and Eve in the story. And that's not a bad thing, right? It's not. They didn't know good and bad before they ate the truth. They didn't know right from wrong before they ate that fruit. So that's not what that story is about. It's about being in this present moment and thinking that I need to be able to run that marathon. There shouldn't be so many people dead. Somebody else needs to be president. All these things. But what I think it means is that right now, in this moment is complete. And the past moment is complete. And the future moments will be complete. And there are these 2 worlds, the world of shalom, or peace, and the world of that we live in, the world of Bethesda, where it's incomplete. Everybody's always jostling to make things better. And there's a paradox in this, right? That you can't get to these points of being low and in a very hard place so that you feel like there's no way of getting out, and then your eyes are kind of forced onto the moment that you have. You can't achieve that by hoping for it. And if there is a blessing in a moment like what we're in right now, I think this is it. It took the man at Bethesda 38 years to realize this. By the way, the Zen Buddhists say it is, it's like trying to find an ox while riding on an ox, or trying to find your glasses while they're right here on your face. I remember my buddy, I got a Buddhist buddy at the seminary, and he conveyed this Zen teaching, and you probably heard it. They said, Zen spirituality is not thinking about God while you peel potatoes. It's peeling the potatoes. Like really doing that. I said, okay, so you can practice this. And then one day, in a kind of fit of fun, I texted my friend. I said, Stephen, I said, I was peeling potatoes, and I was just thinking about the day and this argument I had with somebody, and my kids were like screaming behind me. And I was so frustrated while I was peeling the potatoes. I mean, maybe I was washing dishes, I think. I said, but I did all that perfectly. He just laughed, right? But that's about the sense of this realization. It doesn't change anything about the world, but it changes everything, right? All the struggles we see because we feel like the moment is incomplete, we can breathe. Because we've been through times like these, we can feel that this moment is complete. And one last point about this story at Bethesda. Jesus didn't, like the man who was sick, he didn't know who Jesus was. He didn't believe. He wasn't one of the faithful. I mean, I think this is really important in this world of in-group and out-group Christians where you've got to believe. It's up to you, your choice. You can do it. No. This man didn't believe in Jesus. He didn't even know the guy's name. It says in verse 13 that when the authorities came after him, because he wasn't playing in the system anymore, and they'll come after you, he said, I have no idea who that guy was. I don't know who it was. Just, he had vanished into the crowd. When I turned around to look, he was gone. So it wasn't about faith, about belief, any of that. Now, this story is telling a truth. It's a truth that's in the Torah. It's scientifically accurate, this truth about the completeness of the moment. It's just true. That our condition is to feel that now is incomplete, and that's where all the joys and sufferings and pains and all that happen, and there's no other game to play. But the fact that the idea that it's incomplete is not true. Said the world is shalom, and shalom means completeness, right? And this is actually maybe the last word that Jesus said on the cross in the Gospel of John was, it's done, it's complete, it's finished, it's enough. Words for completeness and incompleteness just are all over the Hebrew language. And they're way more prevalent than ideas of good and bad. They really define, I think, the spectrum on which Jewish spirituality lands. But this idea that Jesus disappeared into the crowd. Right? So I want to read again the end of that Alan Watts quote, where he says, he's talking about being in the present moment. There's only now, he says, though moving it's always still. It's not going anywhere. When we try to catch it, it seems to run away, and yet it's always here. There's no escape from it. And when we turn around to find the self which knows this moment, when we realize we're there, and we turn around and try to see who that was, we find that it has vanished like the past. And when the Judean authorities asked the man, who said, take up your mat and walk? Now, the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had disappeared into the crowd that was there. Vanished like the past. Alan Watts and the author of this story are talking about the same truth. So, all that being said, where do we go from there? What do we do with this? How do we take it to the voting booth or to tomorrow? Basically, just for me, it boils down to this. You're enough. I'm enough. As we are. This moment is complete, and it will be complete. It's complete in the future. The next moment will be complete. It's complete now. Everything is enough. You're enough. For me, God is that truth. God is not. That's what love is. That's what God's love is for me. It's the truth of this completeness. It's the truth but put into a face that can tell me this truth. That's what God is for me. So I invite you to take a look around, since we don't have anything else to do, and say, I'm not in control, but I'm enough. It's hard to say, but Trump is fearfully and wonderfully made. Pence is blessed. Kamala is beloved. And Jesus died for Joe Biden too. So there's only now, as Alan Watts said. You're enough. Don't keep it together. Don't let it fall apart. Look around. Realize it's okay. You're complete. I believe that. That's my faith statement. Also know it's good science and I think Jesus would approve. It helps me out sometimes from getting too crazy. Amen.
Our song of response today is Be Still My Soul, with lyrics by Katharina von Schlegel and music by Jean Sibelius. Schlegel was born in 1697 in Germany. The only one of her hymns which is passed into English is this, Stille mein Wille, dein Jesus hilft siegen, which roughly means, Be still my soul, Jesus is on your side. Jean Sibelius was a Finnish composer and violinist. He is widely recognized as his country's greatest composer, and through his music is often credited with having helped Finland develop a national identity during its struggle for independence. The tune itself is from a tone poem, Finlandia, written in 1899. The piece was composed for the press celebrations of 1899, a covert protest against increasing censorship from the Russian Empire. Lauren will provide us with piano leadership. The lyrics will appear on your screen. Please stand in body and/or spirit, and let us sing together.
Be still my soul, for God is on your side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to your God to order and provide. In every change, God faithful will remain. Be still my soul, your best eternal friend. Through thorny ways leads to a joyful end. Be still my soul, for God will undertake to guide in future days as in the past. Your hope, your confidence, let nothing shake. All now mysterious shall be clear at last. Be still my soul, the waves and winds still know how Jesus' power ruled them long ago. Be still my soul, the hour will soon be here, when we shall be with God whom we adore. With disappointment gone, no grief nor fear, sorrow replaced with joy forevermore. Be still my soul, when change and tears are past. All safe and blessed we shall meet at last.
Now is the time that we bring forth our offerings. In our worship space at Trinity, we always have two opportunities for our offerings. First, a wooden bowl for the programs and ministries of Trinity. And Trinity remains committed to the health and well-being of the whole community. We remain committed to following the advice and guidance of health professionals and scientists, even as we yearn to embrace this beloved community and to act in typical Trinity fashion to support those in need, those who are oppressed, and those who are made invisible. Your support of Trinity is critical for us to meet the commitment that we made to put the well-being of this broad community first in our hearts and in our actions. And that means to continue worshiping online for a while longer, and to continue paying the dedicated folks who work with our children and our hourly staff, and to making our facilities available to Hope Food Pantry and to maintain those facilities. It's so important in this uncertain pandemic time to fill out that online pledge form to help Trinity's leadership prepare a budget for the coming year. You'll find a link in the video description of this broadcast, and also in the mailing sent to your home. Each week also we have a woven basket for a special offering, and this week it is for Bookspring. Bookspring is a Central Texas charitable organization focusing on building literacy skills and the motivation to read through increasing book ownership and reading activities for children at home. Trinity has supported this cause, which was formerly called Reading is Fundamental, since the mid-1960s. Trinity became, in fact, one of the original 2 congregations to support Reading is Fundamental at the Montopolis Friendship Center. Now, there are several methods by which you can give to Trinity today. You can visit our website at www.trinitychurchofaustin.org, and then click the Support tab and scroll down that page to find all of the options there. You can download Give Plus mobile app from either iTunes or Google Play, and you can also text your offering to 512-967-0292 and add the keyword special to support Bookspring. And if you want to give to the general fund and the special offering, send 2 texts, one with the keyword special and one without. Please send Trinity your most generous offerings today.
Hey Trinity, it's Joe, your other pastoral intern. Since this week Gus was doing the preaching, we decided that I would do the highlights. So, first and foremost, if you need pastoral care, you can reach out to either Sid's cell phone or to pastoralcare@trinitychurchofaustin.org. This address only goes to Sid, Mark, Gus, and me, so only the pastoral staff. We are also still needing your commitments of time, treasure, and talent for our annual budget and to continue our programs and ministries. By filling out these pledge forms, you really help us figure out what resources we have for the next year. You can fill out your pledge form online via the link in the video description or in the email update. Next week, we will be having a meeting after the church service on anti-racism. This meeting will be following Trinity's church-wide study of the book, White Supremacy and Me, by Layla Saad. All are welcome at the meeting, even if you haven't read the book, to discuss how Trinity can further its commitment to anti-racism. Finally, Virtual Coffee with Sid is still happening on Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. This is a great time to meet and catch up with Sid and your Trinity family. Email office@trinitychurchofaustin.org to get the Google Meet link to join those meetings. That's all that I had for you this Sunday. Now I'll be passing it back to Sid for the benediction. Bye.
Because it's the third week in the month, we want to take just a few moments to say that if you have been thinking about becoming a member of Trinity, please feel free to reach out to me. I know it's a strange time to even talk about that or know how to do that during a pandemic where we're not meeting face to face. But we at Trinity want you to know that if you'd like to become a formal member of this community, there is a way of doing that. I'm happy to meet with you, to visit with you via Zoom, and we can talk about the values and principles and some of the history of Trinity so you know what you're getting into. But also just remember this, that we don't count you as second class if you aren't a member. We have many people that are part of the community and have been for many years that are members not only of other churches but members of other faiths in some cases. And so we believe in being a community together no matter what and seeing each other as part of a sacred connection. So you will be welcomed and fully incorporated regardless. But if you would like that formal crossing of the threshold, please just reach out and let me know. Thank you. And now let's receive our benediction. Now may the peace of God go with us. May the power of God sustain us. And may the love of God keep us together forever. Amen.
You shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy. All the trees of the field will clap their hands. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Trees of the field will clap their hands. Trees of the field will clap their hands while you go out with joy. You shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy. All the trees of the field will clap their hands. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Trees of the field will clap their hands. Trees of the field will clap their hands while you go out with joy.